All right, everybody, welcome back to yet again another season preview, and apologies for the quality. We're down a light right now, unfortunately. But yeah, our previews continue today with the Edmonton Oilers, a team who took a huge step up this past season, and it is looking really good for this Oilers team as of right now heading into next season. Last season, though, they went 49, 27, and 6 for 104 points. They scored 290 goals and only let in 252, and they obviously lost in round 3 against the Colorado Avalanche. Leading scorer was, to no surprise, Connor McDavid with 44 goals, 79 assists for 123 points, and then your goaltender who played the most games was Mikko Koskinen with a 27, 12, and 4 record with a 3.10 goals against average. Obviously, the big talk for the past couple of years was that, McDavid's only experienced the second round. He's only won one round in his playoff career. Well, no, they broke that, and they won 2 rounds this year, beating the Kings and the Flames to win out the Pacific Division and move on and lose to the Avalanche in an unfortunate sweep. But it was definitely a big step for this hockey team. 100%, a group of players that were really meant as, it's just a McDavid, Draisaitl team. That's the only 2 players that are on this roster. They're the only 2 players that matters. Well, no, that rhetoric is kind of getting changed now as more players are moving in, more players are getting signed. And things are definitely looking up for the Edmonton Oilers as of right now. But they did have quite the eventful offseason. We're looking at their departures. Duncan Keith, Mikko Koskinen, Zach Kassian, Kyle Turris, Chris Russell, Derek Brassard, and Josh Archibald are some of your most notable departures. Now, not a lot of these are really eye-openers. You can make a case that all of these players leaving is good. Because obviously Koskinen wasn't the goaltender that Edmonton needed to go all the way. Duncan Keith wasn't the best defenseman in the world, let's face it. He was out of his prime. Zach Kassian, Kyle Turris, and honestly the rest of those guys like Russell, Brassard, and Archibald were players that weren't really that big of losses. Honestly, they were really all just kind of bottom 6, third line forwards. None of them really panned out the way Edmonton wanted them to. Russell wasn't horrible. He was good at times, and Archibald kind of got a bad rap because of, I think it was the COVID vaccines that caused him some health issues. But I mean, apart from that, no really eye-openers, no really players that you say, oh yeah, that's bad that they left. All these players are kind of good. You look at their acquisitions, they acquired Matthias Janmark, Greg McKegg, Jack Campbell, and Calvin Pickard as your 4 key arrivals. Obviously, Campbell's likely going to be the starter, and Pickard's going to be probably the third-string goalie. And then McKegg and Janmark are some solid depth players. If you've known me for a while, I've liked Janmark since his days with the Dallas Stars going on that Stanley Cup run. He's definitely bounced around the league a little bit, but I think he's looked very solid, playing kind of a bottom 6, third line, fourth line role. But obviously, there are some good acquisitions. I think this team kind of looks better all around if we're being honest. You look at their projected lineups now. On your top 6, you have Evander Kane, Connor McDavid, and Kailer Yamamoto. Then you have Zach Hyman, Leon Draisaitl, and Jesse Puljujarvi. Obviously, a really good top 6 there. One of the best in the league. McDavid and Draisaitl are really what carries it. But obviously, guys like Evander Kane and Zach Hyman obviously are both very solid. And Yamamoto and Puljujarvi, they're looking good as well. Puljujarvi, been looking a little bit edgy with him. He could be an X factor for this team, definitely, and maybe he could actually have a bounce-back season, but he was in trade rumors. He could very well still get traded, but we'll see what happens there with the Oilers and Puljujarvi. Looking at your bottom 6 here, you have Warren Fogle, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, and Derek Ryan. Then you have Matthias Janmark, Ryan McLeod, and Devin Shore. And then for some extra forwards, you have Dylan Holloway, Greg McKegg, and Seth Griffith. Dylan Holloway is interesting, and he kind of plays the same role as Jake Neighbors kind of does. Holloway is one of those young players that may come into the lineup this season, may solidify himself in NHL spot, and he very well could. That left wing side may be a little bit competitive, but I think that he could very well solidify himself as a really good player if he takes the step up this coming season. But obviously, they're a really solid bottom 6. You got some solid depth players there. Fogle, solid third liner. Janmark, as I said, solid third, fourth liner. McLeod could really take a step up this coming season if he plays well in that fourth line. Could maybe even get, he won't get top 6 minutes, let's face it. Playing on a team where McDavid and Draisaitl is your 1-2 punch, it's difficult. But he could try and pass Ryan Nugent-Hopkins for that third line center role. I definitely would not stop him. I think he would do very well with that role. You look at their defense now. You have Darnell Nurse and Tyson Barrie as your first pairing. Then you have Cody Ceci and Evan Bouchard as your second pairing. Then you have Brett Kulak and Slater Kokoek as your third pairing. Then you have Broberg and Murray as two additional defensemen. Broberg's looking like that wild card defender who could very well sneak his way into that top six. So we'll see what Broberg can do, obviously. But definitely a much more improved defense from when I last did this. Back in 2021, I thought this defense was really weak. I think it is much more improved, adding players like Kulak, and Bouchard has definitely established himself as a good defender. And guys like Ceci and Barrie have actually gotten substantially better in their time with Edmonton than they did previously with, actually, Toronto. They both were with Toronto. So that is kind of ironic, but overall, a pretty solid defense. You look at your goaltending now. You have Jack Campbell as your starting goaltender. Then you have Stuart Skinner as your backup. Then you obviously have Calvin Pickard as your third string goalie, which I'm just going to throw in the biggest question here, which brings you into one of our questions. How will the goaltending do? Obviously, this is a whole new goaltending. Koskinen's gone. Smith's on LTIR, likely to never play again, is what we've been seeing. And that leaves your tandem with Campbell and Skinner. Now, Jack Campbell's obviously an established starting goaltender. He's played well in these years with Toronto, I would say, and I think he's done very good by himself. And I think Toronto fans, some may over-criticize him, but I still think he is a very solid goaltender and would definitely do well on a team like the Oilers. And Stuart Skinner is kind of that goalie of the future for Edmonton. Many people have been saying that he's that next goalie for Edmonton. He's shown some promise when he's played up in the NHL the past couple of years, and he looks solid down in Bakersfield as well. So we'll see what Stuart Skinner can transition into the NHL, likely playing that backup role unless Mike Smith makes a crazy return, which is not looking very likely right now. Now, the other question is, and this is another thing that the Oilers have been criticized for in the past, how will the depth do? And I think that the depth is much more better than it has been in the past couple of years. 100%. Adding guys like Janmark and then Fogle over the past couple of years, it really does look a lot better than it has in the past. Some more underrated type players. It's not the best depth in the world, but it's definitely manageable and it's definitely good. And you have some young guys who definitely could come in here and try and play for one of those roles. And that's that's the fun in it, really. I like seeing young players that we don't see all too often come up into the lineup and play really well. And I think a guy like Dylan Holloway or even Broberg on that defense could be one of them. So we'll see what happens there for the depth on the Oilers, but I think it'll be good nonetheless. You look at their point projections or their point of mirror according to the Hockey News' fantasy guide here. You have Connor McDavid leading the way with 130 points. Then you have Leon Draisaitl in second with 105. Then you have Kane in third with 67. Nugent Hopkins in fourth with 56. And then Zach Hyman rounding out your top five with 55. Obviously there, McDavid leading the way without a doubt, no question. Draisaitl in second. Seems pretty accurate. And then Kane in third, and maybe some guys who could surprise us. Maybe Yamamoto has another huge season. Maybe he gets like to a 55, 65 point score pace. I could see that happening. So Yamamoto is one of my wild cards players there. Your sleeper or your bust is Jesse Puljujarvi. To really no surprise, he's really that one player that really anything could happen this season. A one-season sojourn in Finland where Jesse Puljujarvi led Karpatin scoring hasn't translated to the NHL, where he could not cement a spot in the Oilers' top six. If Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl can't bring the best out of him, who can? And that really is something. If McDavid and Draisaitl, arguably the two best players in the league, can't bring some offense or at least something out of Jesse Puljujarvi, who can? So, I mean, that really is the question here for the Edmonton Oilers, and we'll see how Puljujarvi can do in yet again another season with the Oilers. It just hasn't worked out in Edmonton yet, and I think that if he doesn't do well this year, the Oilers are kind of worried that he will go flourish somewhere else. But at this point, the Oilers may just have to say, well, it's not going to work out. Maybe we do need to deal him. And maybe come the trade deadline, they see someone much more suitable for that top six role out there. I'm trying to think of some players who could be out there. Patrick Kane maybe, but that would take a lot more than just Jesse Puljujarvi. But I think that definitely if they see a much better player that could play a much better second-line role for the Oilers, I definitely think Puljujarvi is definitely on his way out, 100%. But it just hasn't worked out so far, and I'm hoping this season maybe he can revive himself a little bit here and rejuvenate himself in Edmonton. Your cup odds, according to the Hockey News' yearbook, are 11-1. So that is significantly low there for that team. The players responded extremely well when Woodcroft took over. His program and preparation preparation of accountability resulted in an immediate buy-in. The Oilers became tougher and harder to play against without sacrificing any offense. This will be the first full season at the helm, so we'll see if things carry over. And we saw a lot with Dave Tippett is that the Oilers just struggled to do everything. Like, the Oilers were just terrible in our remarks, and you saw so many people calling out, oh, fire Tippett, fire Tippett, fire Tippett. And it finally happened, and they brought in Woodcroft, and it was just what they needed. They started playing really good, like, just everywhere. They just started playing amazing, and this team really took a huge step up. And I definitely think that this coming season, they could honestly take an even bigger step up. Now my question is, do they make the playoffs? In 2021, I said yes. I never wrote it down, but in 2022, I also said yes. And yet again, in 2023, I'm also going to say yes. And I think this team could very well go all the way. And I think not only is it good for the Oilers, it's good for marketing too, because McDavid's obviously the most marketable player in the league. Everybody knows who this guy is. So it would be an amazing market ability for the NHL, absolutely, if McDavid made it to the Cup Finals. But I honestly think that maybe with a few tweaks, maybe another top six forward, I'm not gonna say it's gonna happen, but maybe a guy like Patrick Kane, and you move out a guy like Puljujärvi, maybe you add another piece to that defense. Maybe, just maybe, this team could actually be in really good shape to go on a run. Because this past year, making the conference finals was a great experience for this Oilers team, 100%, a team that has not made it past the second round. And most of these players weren't even really on that team in 2017, besides McDavid and Draisaitl and some of the basic players. But more or less, this is kind of a whole new team. They got a lot of experience last year, and I definitely think that it will carry over, and maybe we could see them going to the Cup Finals this coming season and maybe doing something. But that is saying a lot, getting past teams like Colorado and some other good teams in that Western Conference. We'll see. But anyways, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you all very much for watching. For iSports Late, I really do appreciate it. Make sure to subscribe down below if you are new. And anyways, thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Adios.